Boyle. The point of view that plugs you in. The perspective we all need. Danielle Smith on 770 CHQR. Join the conversation. Toll free 1-800-563-7770. Call or text 403-974-8255. Danielle Smith on 770 CHQR.
Brought to you by the Popowich Carmeli Advisory Group, CIBC Wood Gundy.
All right, guys, I want to start this segment by telling you a little bit about my guest. So he got in touch with me after yesterday when I was saying, what in the world is happening with public transit? That's the one thing that you would expect to rely on in bad weather, because you might be thinking, well, I don't want to drive today. I'll take the bus. And yet it was the buses, at least 80 of them, that ended up in, and the ones I saw, they were in a position where they were right across the road. I don't even know how they got in that position in the first place. I mean, I've heard, yeah, okay, if you pull too close to the curb, you get stuck and can't get out. Fair enough. But what about the stories that we're hearing of them slipping and sliding all over the place? And I don't know, a bus that has its butt up against the curb and it's right across the road perpendicular, I don't think you can make the argument that they got too close to the curb and therefore they got stuck. There's something else clearly going wrong here. So I had a firefighter yesterday sent me a note saying that their trucks have traction chains that automatically come down with an air switch. And one of our producers is in Portland, lived in Portland, Oregon for a while, and he said that they had them in Portland too. How many times do you have major snowfall in Portland? Why don't we have that kind of thing here? So when my guest got in touch with me and sent me the correspondence that he had with his bosses at Calgary Transit and the pictures that he showed of trying to make complaints about going out with tires that not only didn't have a good enough tread, were bald. They had no tread at all, and trying to raise this as a safety issue and essentially getting nowhere. I wondered, what is happening here? So he has a little bit of background here. But I raised the question yesterday about why it is. We're having conversations about whether you and me should have winter tires. And I asked the question, well, why is it that buses don't have winter tires? If they're the ones creating these huge log jams and bottlenecks and creating an even bigger problem because they can't get moving, safety problem for their passengers, safety problem for themselves as drivers, why wouldn't you, even if it's just the rear tires, put winter tires on them, or have this kind of traction chain that we have on other emergency vehicles? Well, the media posed that question to Doug Morgan yesterday, and here was his answer to that question. Listen to what he had to say.
The buses do not have winter tires, so we have done some testing on the traction benefits and the costs, and to this point we haven't seen a business case to make the investment in snow tires. In general, they do provide the right amount of traction, especially with the weight distribution of the bus.
Okay. So that's the official response. We don't need snow tires. So Steven Ruthven retired from Calgary Transit in June 2017 as a large bus operator. So maybe that's the only reason he's able to talk to me. I'm quite sure that if he was still there, I wouldn't know anything about this. But he has a background in law enforcement, including motor transport enforcement with the Alberta Highway Patrol in the early 80s, then into the military police, where he was stationed at CFB Calgary, AB1 military police platoon. He also has experience in the transportation industry. In November 1999, he worked as a part-time school bus operator until June 2004, when he started a full-time career with Red Deer Transit as a large bus operator, with part-time experience as a transit dispatcher and transit operations supervisor, and worked there until July 2007. Then, of course, worked for the city of Calgary up until his retirement in June 2017. And he joins me now because he attempted to raise some of the issues with the tires and the safety issue that it was causing. And it looks to me like he didn't get anywhere. We're going to find out some of the reasons for that. Steven, thanks so much for being with me today.
Yes, good morning.
I want to just walk through some of the correspondence that you have, and then we'll talk a bit about how your experience differed when you were a school bus driver, how your experience differed in Red Deer, and the kind of standards that these kind of vehicles would normally be held to if an inspector came in. So first of all, tell us when you realized that you had a problem with driving your bus with bald tires.
Well, as a normal check, you walk around your bus at the garage and you check on the safety system lights and stuff. And I was noticing some of the tread was getting pretty down, but I didn't notice any buses that had bald tires at that time when I first started with transit. Coming forward a bit, I still on spare board and a 60-hour operator, so you get your work over a 12-hour period. I was doing a school run out of Spring Gardens Transit Garage, and I took an MCI bus, and it has like wipers over the sides, so you can't really see the tires too well, and it's kind of a messy situation getting in there to have a look at it. So what happened was I was going on John Laurie Boulevard, and I noticed my back rear tire spinning up, and it was quite dirty, icy on John Laurie going up the hills and down. And so I thought that was kind of strange, and having had experience with large vehicles, that was usually an indicator of loss of traction. And later on, when I got to Shaganappy Trail and made a left, dead slow, my bus went across 3 lanes of traffic. So when I finally got it back under control, I pulled over by Dalton Drive and got out and checked the tires, and both sides were bald. I was just like...
Front and back?
Well, the back, the steering axles were fine, but the back drivers were bald.
And the back are the ones that really matter, because you've got rear-wheel drive on the buses, so you need those to be your best.
That's right. So I radioed control and said, I'm going to lump the bus over to the school. I need a change off. And control said to me, well, we don't change off for bald tires. And that just started there. Well, I said, well...
What about bald tires that cause you to go across 3 lanes of traffic when you're turning?
Yeah,
that would seem to be...
So when I was talking to control, I said, I'm going to be doing a school run. I'm a past school bus operator. I said, when I worked for Cardinal, I said, they never let me out driving a bus with school children. So why will you not change this bus off? And I got the same type of reaction. And then I said, well, I want to change off and not moving this bus. And he asked me 3 times, are you sure you want to? I said, yeah, send me a change off. So anyways, there was another 703 there, and he had enough room to take all the students, which made him pretty full. The change off bus came, and the guy that brought the change off bus out, I showed him the tires. He says, there's no way I'm driving that bus back. He called maintenance and had a tow truck tow it back. So and when I got back to the garage, I phoned Fleet, and I talked to a guy at Fleet, and the guy said, yeah, that things on schedule and being put on the rack.
So
and the
basically, if 2
off.
people complain, they'll do something about it. But if just one person complains, it's can you get away with doing it?
I think it's kind of an intimidation factor also. Like the new bus drivers don't have the background I do, so they just like control is God, and God is speaking, and you shall do what you're told. And I think drivers have to use their common sense a little bit more. If it's not safe, you have the right to refuse unsafe work.
Let me ask you about the difference in experience when you said you worked at Cardinal, when you drove a school bus. What would happen? I mean, first of all, they don't have the rear tires obscured, so I think you'd be able to see the tread. But what was the maintenance schedule on tires in that company? With
Cardinal Coast Lines, because they're under provincial regulations for the school, the same as Greyhound. Greyhound has to comply with the same regulations, and school buses more so. And they go through a check, I think it was every 6 months. But I did a floater bus there for a while, and I pulled in to get tires retorted, and I was impressed because the guy said, well, you need a front tires changed off there. The tread's too low on it, and to me it looked fine, right? Like there's still like over an inch of tread on it, and he changed off the 2 front tires. And then I had to come back again and get retorqued.
And so that was the standard that they held you to. What about what happened in Red Deer? Because that would have been also a public transit system.
With the city of Red Deer Transit, their buses were maintained. Never had a problem with lights. Never had a problem with tires.
Okay, so let's then talk about, because you shared me some pictures.
I showed you a few pictures.
Yeah, and you'd be hard-pressed to find a tread on some of these tires. Yeah. You sent them up the food chain to managers. I sent them
right to the manager, the new manager of transit, Paula. I sent her all the pictures.
And what was their reaction?
Well, basically, she's pretty concerned. I think she's doing a good job. So as a manager, she delegates, right? So she delegated it out to the VP coordinator. He's a good guy, as far as I'm concerned. He took an interest in it. And we had a meeting with Mr. Walton, John Walton, who was a representative for Fleet. And so I put some questions to him about, what are the checks and balances for ensuring that safety issues are addressed. Horns not working, lights not working.
Bald tires. What was the answer?
Bald tires, and I suggested to him that I was considering writing a letter to the Minister of Transport, who is also a former bus driver. And that kind of got his eyes open. He says, well, why would you want to mush things up, he said to me. And in a meeting with the VP coordinator and the supervisor, and I believe there was a union rep there also. So that just kind of shocked me.
Well, this is the other part. Why isn't your union advocating on this? I mean, it must have created a lot of stress and a lot of dangerous situations for everybody on the roads yesterday. And it seems to me this would be the main thing that a union would bring forward from a working conditions point of view.
The union is turning blue in the face from trying to get stuff done. And from my past experience as chairman of sublocal Red Deer ATU 1374, management has its costs, its way of doing business, and so does Calgary Transit.
Well, let's then talk about this, because you talk about the level of oversight. So you sent me this certificate that says that the Department of Transportation exemption by registrar, and it expires December 1st, 2019, but I'm reading this, and it looks to me that the City of Calgary Transit has been exempted from oversight by the Transportation Minister, so they don't have to go through the same kind of checks that a private company's operating school bus service has to go through. Am I reading that right?
You're right, and I'll expand on that in a second, but bring you up to date. When I first was hired with Calgary Transit, there were blue decals on and inspection reports in the buses. And they were still reporting to the province at that time. About a year after being with Calgary Transit, the blue decals that showed the bus was inspected, because it had the date, year, and the month, they disappeared. The inspection reports that commercial buses and school buses have to have disappeared. And so essentially what I'm seeing is that transit systems in Alberta are left on their own to do their own inspections on their own schedule. So where they do it with the National Safety Code minimum standards, I can't tell you.
Okay, let's take a pause here, because you'll have to tell us about how it is that deficiencies do get reported, because I think that's also a little bit different than what you've experienced in the past. So here it is, guys. You have the City of Calgary internal management that are responsible for overseeing their own inspections. They don't have to have the same standard, not the same standard as the Transportation Minister would require of other operators who are outside the city. Now, I guess the notion behind that is it's a grown-up city. They can do grown-up things, like manage their own affairs. But the question is, what are you supposed to do if you find deficiencies and then you can't get them addressed, especially if it's creating a safety issue? I ask you that question, and I'm going to pose that as well to my guest when we return on 770 CHQR. All right, got some comments from you guys. Commercial transport vehicles don't have winter tires, for your information. Okay, but they do have chains on their tires, and that's another option, right? Somebody's saying most of the drivers were hired in the spring. None of them have experience driving on snow. It's a rookie mistake, and yes, we do need self-chain buses. Another person saying a $4.2 billion plus for the Green Line. The inevitable $10 billion for the Olympics that would buy an awful lot of snow tires, or chains for that matter. City Council has no vision except for delusions of grandeur that feed their entitled egos. Take care of what you need first. what you're using now than worry about self-gratifying, legacy-building, autobiographical-filling, unnecessary projects. Well, boy, tell us what you really think as well. Another person asking, how are buses with inadequate tires even allowed on the road by the commercial vehicle police? Well, I think what my guest just said is there's no one to stop them. They don't have that. Somebody sent me the blue decal that is referring to. It's a CVIP, a commercial vehicle inspection permit. It's on the window and it checks off the last year that you were inspected, but they don't have to do this anymore or at all. And Steven's provided me with the vehicle inspection regulation, and it says right in here that the regulations do not apply to a commercial vehicle that's being used to transport agricultural products, so a bona fide farmer who owns and produces the agricultural product, or an employee of that farmer, a 2 or 3 axle vehicle that's used for the transport of primary products on a forest, lake, or river, where the driver's employer is the producer of those products, so internal sites, and C, a transit bus. I don't know. That seems to be a pretty big exclusion. So can you answer that question, Steven? Like how would a bus like this get taken off the road? Who has the authority to say, no, you can't drive with the tires like that?
Well, ultimately, it's up to the bus driver to make that decision.
So the bus driver has to be their own inspector.
Yes.
And you've got a bunch of rookies coming in with I mean, it sounds like you said that it's a little bit tricky when you're trying to deal with somebody in headquarters saying, I need to park this bus because the tires aren't safe.
It can be a little bit intimidating dealing with control, yes.
Well, tell me a little bit about other deficiencies. I mean, surely they must have a system for how you report something that's wrong with the bus and then how it gets fixed.
Well, when you go to your bus, we have no paperwork. So if we see a defect, we have to keep it in our mind. If it's something that can be booked later on, we bring the bus back to the barn. If we're just doing a rush hour run or a school run, come back and book the bus in for repair. But if it's something serious, like brake's not airing up fast enough, or you step on the brake and it deflates too fast or won't hold its air, then that's an issue where you have to make a determination and say this bus is unsafe. And you call control calls fleet sends somebody over to the bus to see if they can rectify the issue. If not, then the fleet person will give you another bus. When you go to the new bus, you DI that vehicle.
But it's all internal. It's essentially...
It's all internal. So there's...
And what happens on a day where you have to hand off your bus multiple times through the course of a day to a new driver?
Well, this is the gray area that I would like, because there's no trip inspection report that you can pass on to the next driver. It's verbal. So I don't know if they changed that, but I know Fleet tried to bring out a form and they didn't pass it through the union first because it has to be agreed upon. And so that didn't go anywhere. So I don't know if they've gone past that or not, but that's something that we did discuss a bit.
Well, I'll see if I can do a follow-up on it. What's the bottom line here for you? What do you think needs to happen?
Well, the bottom line is, I think probably transit needs to go back under the provincial inspection schedule. And I think there has to be an audit done to ensure that the vehicles are being properly maintained, because quite often you get in vehicles that have been in for service and they're put back on the line.
Without being fixed?
Yeah. Now, I can tell you one vehicle that was in multiple times. A classmate and I did drive that vehicle, and it was wintertime, and working fine, get on the road, poof. I still have lights inside, lights on my dash, no lights outside, no ident lights, no clearance lights, no headlights, no brake lights, no four-way flashers. And so this vehicle is continually being put back on the road from Spring Gardens. And I finally I let the union know. And one day, I was following this vehicle out of the garage. And the lady did her walk around and checked everything. And then she got near to where they turned on to 32nd. And bang, the lights went out.
My goodness. So So sometimes even deficiencies aren't being fully corrected before they're sending out again. Stephen, thank you for making us aware of this story. We'll continue to do follow-ups on it, but a lot of people were asking the question yesterday about what in the world was going on. You've helped us fill in some blanks on that, and I do appreciate your time today.
Yeah, I'm sure I'll hear about it.
I'm sure you will too. Steven Ruthven retired from Calgary Transit in June 2017. So that may be one of the problems. So if I was a city council member, I would be doing exactly what Steven says. Call for an independent audit, just looking at the nature of whether or not these vehicles are up to standard. And if you find that there's they don't even have sort of an outside inspection process to be able to do this every 6 months, institute one. And if you're not prepared to institute one, maybe the province needs to come in and make sure that transit buses are living up to the same standard as every other commercial vehicle. Let's take a pause. If you got some thoughts, 403-974-8255. We'll be right back on 770 CHQR.